Hey, Roscoe, man,
Yo,
do you believe in love at first sight?
love at first sight. That's interesting because at one point when I was younger, I did. Now, no.
It's funny that you say that because I was reading in a 2017 poll from a dating site named Elite Singles through Harper's Bazaar that 61% of women and 72% of men still believe in love at first sight. What that tells me is two things. One, men are more romantic and therefore delusional than women, and that a lot of people need to wake up from their Disney induced fantasy. You want to go in on this topic?
Please, let's do.
Let's do it. All right, so that moment when you wake up from a bomb dream or a fantasy is the absolute worst. You know, why you ask is because between the economic hardships that we're all going through, the government lying to people, the increasing in lawlessness and homelessness all over the place, infidelity in relationships make reality so disappointingly sobering. And yet, the reality of our world has to be confronted head on. You have a perspective on this, Roscoe?
I do. My perspective on, death of the fantasy, as we're calling this. A lot of people do live or make up certain rules for themselves or a certain outcome that they expect for themselves that in a lot of respects isn't a realistic outcome. So I think a lot of people have the issue of dealing with the reality of things as opposed to what they constitute as this outcome that they make up in their head. So um, kind of my thing is just the people dealing with reality and the problem of doing that. So
Interesting. You know, what comes to mind for me is Cypher, the wannabe blue pillar traitor in the movie The Matrix. One thing he says to the character Agent Smith when he's trying to get plugged back into the Matrix, he's eating a steak. And he's like, I know this steak ain't real. And yet it is delicious to me. He
mhm.
goes on to say, ignorance is bliss. And so it's situations like that where the blissfulness of ignorance versus the stark reality of what we have to face on a day to day basis. There are people who we cohabitate with, who we work with, parents, brothers, sisters. They're all like Cypher.
Yeah,
Cypher was willing to betray everything that he loved. Well, who we assumed he loved, which was his shipmates, his brothers and sisters in arms. There are people who will jump ship from a real relationship and go off with a fantasy. I say all this because of the side dude, side chick culture. Why is it so popular? Well, it's because it presents a fantasy. At home, you have your wife, your husband, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, and you have the bills, you have the children, you have the sicknesses, you have to cook dinner, you have the day to day, you see this person pass gas, you see this person playing with their nose because you're around them all the time. But then, ooh, this new person over here. Hey, how you doing? with your fatty, or the guy, oh, let's live tall, dark, and handsome. You know how women get. And so they start to move over to that fantasy. As they move over to that fantasy, they start to neglect the reality. This other person that you're kicking it with, they don't really love you. That other person that puts up with your nonsense, they love you. Because only somebody who loves you will put up with your nonsense. But they sacrifice the real for the fake being that fantasy. This person who you're moving over to, you get sick, you're just in the hospital. They're not bringing you flowers. They're not helping you get well at home. They're not doing anything for you. But the person that is financially on the hook for you, emotionally on the hook for you, that's the person that seems to be forsaken. You have another take on this, bro?
Yeah, no, it's crazy because when you talk about a lot of that stuff, it reminds me of my relationship with my ex, Michelle. And crazy enough, I would be the bad guy in the situation because I was the guy who entertained a lot of the fantasies, and I was used to, certain things from certain chicks and that, and meanwhile, I had a chick who was riding for me and was willing to do all the right things and hold me down and, just being solid all the way through. And I was just a plain a-hole and going nuts and doing all this crazy stuff. So yeah, I would be a guy who fell victim to just a lot of the fantasies and falling into that world when actually I'm a guy who's always known better, so, even those who know better sometimes can be susceptible to this kind of stuff. But of course I was younger then and I've grown since then. And that was one of the things that helped me grow. And I wouldn't have known better. But yeah, you talk about fantasy and how, you talked about the character Cypher from the movie, and I relate that to people and how, people know that people mean more than fashion or trinkets or cars and that, and yet we still fall into the matrix of, society letting these things be more important than the things that we know are important. So, right. So yeah, no, it's just one of those things, just bizarro world as I call it always, but everything is backwards. Everything that should be is totally the opposite way.
I agree. I want to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Where were you at, or do you remember where you were at on March 8th, 1991?
March 8th, 1991. No, I do not right off the top of my head.
Well, I remember where I was.
Okay.
My father, he took me and my sisters to go to see New Jack City.
Okay.
It was a Friday.
Okay.
But the reason I bring that up is because, it was a crooner in that movie, that I loved as a youngster from Uptown Records under Andre Harrell, Mr. Christopher Williams. But he has a song. Oh, Dreaming. You like to hear a song about it?
I suppose we gonna hear this song, so go ahead, bro.
Here you go.
Yes, sir.
Like, don't wake me, I'm dreaming. Please don't wake me if I'm dreaming.
This is crazy, man.
Just let me sleep. Don't wake me up till my dream is complete.
I just want to say this to everybody. I love this dude to death. This is my brother. I love him. But I did not sign off on this. I just want everybody to know that. I did not sign off on this shit. So, love my brother, but he pulled that out on me. I don't know. So that's what's up though. Chris Williams. We crooning now. That's what's up. The Warhead Croon Show. Well, I'm loving. I'm loving.
Oh man. But no, the reason I bring up Christopher Williams in the song Dreaming is because he's literally talking about being in that fantasy state. He wants to stay in that prolonged fantasy. He's like, if I'm dreaming, just let me sleep. Don't wake me up till my dream is complete. And I would assume, even once that dream is complete, he wanted to go right back. I bring all this up because I think about the movie, I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Anne-Marie Johnson's character.
Oh yeah.
You remember?
I do. Yes, I do.
And in that movie, when she started to take off her limbs, her wigs, her makeup, because she was ready to live her truth. She was ready to live in her truth, like, yeah, baby.
Living her truth, all right. Her and that little string on her.
She started to live her truth. And
He was truthfully bald head.
Right. She had no leg.
That's what's
No
up.
breast either. And if I remember correctly, not a butt. But
Yeah.
she was comfortable in her truth.
Right.
And so this is the point of it all. We talk about this love thing that we so-called have with one another, this love at first sight nonsense. There's no such thing as love at first sight because you don't even know the person when you see them. You're in love with a shell. You can't fall in love with a shell. I guess that's lust. That's lust at first sight. You're not supposed to fall in love. You're supposed to walk in love. When you walk in love, you can see things for what they truly are. People are so eager to hop in the bed with someone, and then they end up with a child with someone who they don't know because of love at first sight. This is the death of the fantasy. It's time to wake up. It's time for us to love ourselves first and foremost and live in our truths. When we're dealing with one another, we want to deal with each other authentically. I think it was the movie Why Did I Get Married, where the 80-20 rule was put in play. I had never heard it before that movie, and I've heard of it since then, but it makes perfect sense. When you're dealing with somebody, no, you're not gonna find somebody perfect, but the last thing me as a man, what I want is to see this fine woman and she's beautiful. And I hope it's her hair. I hope it's her butt. I hope it's really her breast. But then later to find out that they've been augmented, or it's fake, or it's a girdle, or a wig, or a weave. And then all these parts start to come off like Anne-Marie Johnson's character in I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker. Am I shallow for wanting authenticity? Or the beauty, I should say, the authenticity of beauty? Maybe. But what I would rather have is a nappy-headed woman who's living her truth without all the fake up, without all the glitz and the glamour and the glam. That way, when she does make herself up, I'm used to how she truly looks as opposed to the vice versa. You got any closing remarks on this, Roscoe?
Yeah. I guess all I could say is the more nappy, the more happy. And that's pretty much it.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Natural is the way to go for me, I suppose. But I understand that women like to doll themselves up, so I'm not opposed to them doing what they have to do, to get themselves dolled up. But if you're doing that extra and that's kind of part of your uniform, on the regular, it is what it is, not my preference, but, live your life, live your truth.
Live your truth. No truer words. At any rate, that's our show. We are the Warheads. Did you have any shout outs you want to put out there?
Shout out to, I guess my man, Big Smooth, that's it.
That's it. Warheads out.